Bustling Buenos Aires has always been the jewel in the South American crown. In the aftermath of the famine, thousands of Irish came here in search of better opportunities. 150 years later, Argentina is once again a destination for Irish visitors, investors and farmers like Jim McCarthy.
I think, Dara, what most people don't realise is the history of Argentina. In 1945 it was the seventh richest country in the world. And it's a very well developed country, and they've had extreme left-wing and extreme right-wing governments in the interim years, but the land law and property laws have always stood up.
And it seems now that the city we're in at the moment, Buenos Aires, seems to be pretty much thriving and bustling.
It's an amazing city, Dara. It's amazing. It's the Paris of South America. This is the main street now with the Julio. I think it's 25 or 6 lanes of traffic.
25 or 26
lanes of traffic. It's an amazing city, and it's an amazing city. For instance, at the moment, you can't get higher office space here because there's such a demand for office space. We're looking to get an office here in Buenos Aires, and it's almost impossible. There's a real boom here. Buenos Aires is a city of about 14 million people. Hard to imagine. As you see, if you're driving around, it's a very stylish city. The Buenos Aires people have a great passion for football, for polo, for beef, and for things all to do with the countryside. All the bookstores, you'll see all the farming magazines, and people there's a television channel completely dedicated to agriculture. So it's a far more mixed society than we have at home. People in Dublin think that we're a bunch of whinging subsidy collectors. The Argentinian farmers held in quite a different light.
Cork tillage farmer Jim McCarthy, along with fellow farmer Walter Furlong, have raised €55 million to invest in Argentina. A fortuitous conversation with a stockbroker led them to South America in search of land. And after years of falling prices, Jim believes agriculture is on its way back.
Well, since 1800, the price of wheat has been falling. But particularly since 1950, it now takes almost 6 tons of wheat to buy what a ton of wheat bought you in 1950. So agriculture has not been an attractive investment, so therefore Argentina or Brazil haven't been attractive investments. But now that there's a lot of people believing in the boom in soft commodities, suddenly Argentina is attractive and suddenly Brazil is attractive because you want large tracts of good land for farming. Like so many Irish farmers, I was getting fed up with farming and with the regulation and all that, and with low prices worldwide. And it was when Mark, who works with a hedge fund in London, comes and says, Jim, I think the next big boom is agricultural commodities, and land prices are low before they get expensive. Now's the time to buy. So that's what we've done. Buying land at home at €25,000 an acre to produce ethanol on is just a pipe dream. It's nonsense. It has no bearing in commercial reality. You're looking at paying 100 times your profit level for the land. But here, you're paying 3 times, 4 times your profit level for the land. I can't say what the economy is going to do in the future, but all I can tell you now is the economy is growing at 6 to 7% a year, and there's a huge inward investment here, and the towering cranes are appearing everywhere. So things are happening in Argentina, and there's a lot of foreign money coming in here.
It wasn't always so. Argentina always put her best foot forward, and in the 40s and 50s had almost regained her status as the leading light of South America, thanks in no small part to the mystique of the Perons. But a succession of military governments failed to manage the economy well, and by 2001 Argentina faced economic meltdown. It couldn't pay its debts of $140 billion and became the biggest defaulter in history. In desperation, the government devalued the currency by 2/3, and in response, the public began to riot in the streets. 5 years on, and the risky strategy appears to be working. There is a palpable air of optimism, much like that which must have met the first wave of Irish immigrants to Argentina in the 1850s. The Southern Cross, the oldest Irish newspaper outside of Ireland, has chronicled the Irish in Argentina since the late 1800s.
The Southern Cross, who started in 1875 by Canon Dillon. I think it was exactly the time when the community flowered here. There was a tremendously big party for St. Patrick's Day in that year. I think that people from all over the country came to it.
How many Irish people would have been in Argentina then, and what were they here for?
I say that in 1875 there would have been somewhere around 4,000 or 5,000. not more than that. The main point was to keep the Irish aware of what was going on in Ireland, so that news from home, as they would say at that time, was given preeminence. Then there was reports of all the births and marriages and deaths. Unless somebody's death was reported in the Southern Cross, he didn't die. I mean, it was a question of that, no?
Was it all good times for the Irish when they first landed out here?
No, there were good times and there were bad times. Most of them came out here, were brought out by people who would share on the profits. 1/3 of whatever was increased in the number of sheep would be set apart each year for the person who did the work. So in a short time, you could, with a big family, you could probably reproduce sheep in large amounts, and then try to buy your own piece of land.
But it was when they switched to cattle rearing that their fortunes really took off.
It's easy to see why meat is so central to Argentinian culture when you come here to Linier's Market, which is right in the heart of Buenos Aires city, a city of 12 million people, and yet you've got 75 acres covered by hundreds of pens and miles, literally miles of walkways which go over all the pens here, and people inspect all the cattle below before they buy them, and the auctioneers just literally walk along these, auctioneers with names like Ganley and Harrington and Lawler, which shows that the Irish connection is still very strong with agriculture here. And it's really an amazing sight to see so many cattle in the same place, right in the heart of one of the biggest cities and capitals in the world.
One of the particularities of Argentine beef is that it's held on to, we'll say, British breeds, shorthorns, and then the Aberdeen Angus and the Hereford. 70% of the Argentine herd is composed by Aberdeen Angus and Hereford. In the north of the country, because of the heat and the bugs, we use Indian cattle like Brahma or Nellore. But the good beef comes from those smaller animals.
Nowadays, the cattle trade that's so synonymous with Argentina and that helped make her great is being pushed to the margins. High world market prices for crops has meant that many farmers can make more money from their land by simply renting it to companies while they take a job in the city.
In Argentina, we would have some 190,000 farmers, but we would say that 20,000 of them own 80% of the production and of the assets. And the rest of them are very scattered around.
Some of the largest landowners today are still the Irish families that emigrated to Argentina in the 1800s. The town of Duggan is named after the most famous of these families, who ended up with a farm more than twice the size of the entire county of Kildare. We were lucky enough to be invited to the seat of the family at Estancia San Ramon.
Well, Mary Robinson, the president, was here 10 years ago. She came with her husband, and years before that, but before I was born, we had Roger Casement.
Staying here?
Staying here. Well, a person with 2,000 hectares is considered a well-off landowner, but my grandfather made much more than that. He came when he was very young, with 17 shillings, and he ended up owning 350,000 hectares. My family started off with sheep. The wool was a very good price. And then they went on with cattle. So that was where they really got off start as well. At the beginning they asked, where do we put all those cattle at night? But the cattle stayed out at night. Of course, in Ireland you have to put them in at night. But here it was a different dimension, the whole thing.
The tradition of cattle rearing is still carried on at San Ramon today, but most of the land is tilled now. Irish accents were often heard on the estate, since most of the gauchos and contractors were of Irish descent. Among them was Padraig Sills, who at 82 years of age is proof of the benefits of the outdoor life.
Well, I came in San Ramon. I didn't work in San Ramon. I came about 40 years ago, but with my own machinery. But here, they had about 100 people in there when they were working with the grass, and I know how it used to be, yes.
What age were you when you learned Spanish?
8 or 10. No, we learned it just going to school. When I was 7 or 8, I don't remember well, but in the year 32, I remember there where I began Spanish. Well, the only song I knew when I was about, 5 or 6 years it was the national anthem. And I remember a little, but not like that. Soldiers are we whose lives are pledged for Ireland. Some have come from a land beyond the wave. I get emotion when I...
Do you?
Yes, now that's why I sing like that. Yes, yeah.
One of the darkest periods of Argentine history occurred between 1976 and 83, when up to 30,000 people disappeared, either murdered or kidnapped for their opposition to the military government. One of the most infamous murders of the time was that of 3 Palatine priests. Dickie Kelly's brother, Alfredo, was one of the victims and is buried in the cemetery in Mercedes.
For you to understand a bit better, I was afraid with the things that was happening. I had 2 nieces that began university in the same year. And I was afraid that something had happened to them, because the young people, they were bringing young people. I never thought they'd kill the priest. Up to now, no one knows who was it and what happened.
But they shot him?
They shot them, yes. They shot them down.
How many priests?
3 priests and 2 seminaries. The students came in, was the last they came in. It seems that they came in with them and shot them all. Some of them got 70 bullets.
The victims of that time are known simply as the disappeared. In remembrance of the sacrifice made by the priests, the streets around our church in Mercedes are named in their honour.
We were reared up in between Mercedes and Suipacha.
In the province of Buenos Aires?
In the province of Buenos Aires. It's only 30 kilometers. And when we were growing up, there was only 2 farms that weren't Irish. In them 30 kilometers. Now they're here.
In all these graves around us here?
In all these graves, yes, they're around, yes. My grandfather came down in 1862 at 22 years of age. And the first connection we had from Ireland was my son went down when he was 140 years after.
Went to visit Ireland?
To visit Ireland, and he was 22, the same age as his great-grandfather when he came. I always felt myself more Irish than Argentine. And when I knew Ireland, I appreciate Argentina.
Right.
More.
When you saw how bad the weather was at home?
Yes. No, the weather not so much, but you have to work a lot more than what we had to work.